So I was having a really cool conversation with my girlfriend about behavior patterns and how sometimes we don't notice that we're in this sort of loop and we don't realize how we're in this loop in perpetuity until we actually realize that you're in it. And it's very hard to notice because they're long loops. They're long loops of behavior. And so, do you ever feel like you are moving forward with the decision that you made and you feel proud of yourself, and then all of a sudden you're stuck, and then you retrace all the way back again, right? And then you keep moving forward, and then all of a sudden you're stuck again, and you stay in this loop, never really making any progress beyond it until maybe somebody points it out to you. You realize, huh, I'm in this behavior pattern. So, for example, in a more practical sense, whenever you decide to open up your phone and there's a certain routine of apps that you will open along the way as after the first app that you open. So, for example, if you're triggered to open your Instagram app, right? Well, which app do you check afterwards? Do you open up Twitter? Do you open up email? Do you open up your text? Or do you open up your text first? And then you notice that all of a sudden you're hooked on your phone searching each individual app, and you make your rounds through those apps. And then you turn your phone off. But you can never just go in and check one app, right? You go and do every single one of them. And are you doing that consciously or are you doing that unconsciously, right? Has that has that behavior pattern been so ingrained inside of you now that you're unconscious of it? And that's essentially the same thing as whenever, I'll say for me, for example, right? I dive into a project, right? I get super engulfed in it. And then I hit my first obstacle. And I say, oh, I can't do this. And I switch to a different thing. There must be a better option, right? And then I start something new, something different. And then I keep moving forward with it. And then I stump myself again, right? And then I'm like, man, why do I always end up here? I always end up at this point where I hit this wall where, maybe this isn't for me, right? And then I switch to another thing. And so that's a more long form behavior pattern, harder to identify because you think that, hey, maybe this thing isn't for me, but maybe it's not that the thing isn't for you. It's more about your behavior pattern and the habit that's subconsciously ingrained in your brain of whenever you attempt to do something, you eventually give up. And there's a certain reason that you might do that. And I mean, it could be a variety of reasons, whether it's fear, you don't think you can do it, you don't actually really want to do it, you just did it for the wrong reasons. It could be any of those things, but what really is to pay attention here is to the behavior pattern, right? And just like we have behavior patterns, we have thought patterns, right? So do you ever think about maybe a thought arises in your brain, right? Let's say it's a thought that triggers you in a way, and it triggers you emotionally. And before you know it, you're in a different reality, literally. You're in this black hole of negativity where you're making up arguments with the people inside your head, right? Whoever those characters are. And you realize, whoa, I need to get out of here, right? And you realize that well, maybe you don't realize, right? Because it's a subconscious thought pattern. But if you can identify with this, then maybe you'll realize that inside your head, you are in a thought pattern of conflict, right? Like, why is my mind seeking conflict? Why do I make up arguments inside my head, right? And this is when we really have to take a step back, and this is why meditation helps so much. Because when you meditate, you are able to observe. You're able to observe your thought patterns, you're able to observe your behavior patterns, and then you can intercept them because you're not fully in there anymore. You see yourself as an avatar that you're controlling, right? And you are the consciousness, controlling the game, right? Some of us, I mean, including me, and we get so involved and we focus so much on the me and the I that you identify with every single emotion and every single behavior, and you think this is me that is doing it. Well, no, it's not necessarily you that's doing it. It is your body, it is your physical being that's actually performing that action. But you aren't actually the one that's doing it, right? You are the conscious controller behind the scenes that's overlooking what everything is happening, right? And if you can put yourself in that position as much as possible, then that's when you'll be able to see, hey, I'm doing this. I shouldn't do that. Why am I doing this? That's when you can actually start asking the questions. It's impossible to ask the questions without identifying what's actually happening first. And sometimes we're stuck. Why do I feel like I'm stuck, right? Well, I think the answer to this, right, is meditation. If you feel like you're stuck in life and don't know what you're doing, well, before you think about your next step in life, before you think about what you're going to do, maybe just analyze what brought you to that situation. And think about what you did in the last 5 years that led you to the point where you're at right now. Because I am sure if you dig deep enough and you journal and you actually try to find the answers, you'll find behavior patterns that led you to this place. And if you don't change the behavior patterns, if you don't actually change, if you don't intercept your behavior patterns, if you don't intercept those thought patterns in which keep you perpetually in this either short loop or on a long loop, then you'll always stay there. And you know those people. We all know those people. It's harder to identify as you continue leveling up in life, right? There's many of us who have grown and have a lot of success, right? But even then, there's things to identify as like, I continue to do this, right? So the game never really ends. It just becomes harder and harder to identify. And sometimes the reason that you can identify it in other people quicker than you can identify it in yourself is because you are observing others when we actually need to be observing ourselves, which we forget to do because we think that we are our emotions when we are our behaviors. In reality, we need to observe our behaviors because we are a separate entity from our behaviors and our emotions and our thoughts. So, in all practicality, we all need to meditate because the act of observing is the skill of observing is the most important skill to have, because a scientist can't problem solve without an observation. You need to make an observation and then hypothesize as to, I wonder if we were to change this variable about the thing I'm observing, and I wonder what the outcome would be. Maybe if we start seeing our lives in that way, we can actually solve the problems. But first, the only way to identify is to actually be able to observe. And to be able to observe, we practice it by meditating. So I think that's the punchline for this video. I think meditation is important, not because it's some, woo-wee transcendental thing. It's because it's the most practical skill, the most practical thing you can do for your own well-being. So, anyways, those are my thoughts for today. It's a beautiful Friday afternoon, and this is Ricky. Hope you guys had an amazing, amazing weekend. Like and subscribe, my friends. Love y'all.